kind of really be aware of your body sitting here. And the only way to do that is to invite your mind to join your body here. And using the motivation for coming here, try to generate a positive intention to use your time well. The more intentional we are, the more that our actions and our speech follow what drives us. So now I think this is the second to last class. I think it was meant to be the last class, but I've noticed on the calendar, after Venerable Amy is here next week, we'll have one more class on this topic, which is a good thing because I've never finished tonight. So welcome to the third scope. So the graduated path to enlightenment is divided into these scopes. And the scopes are based on your capacity. So like beginners, what they're really focused on usually is just understanding how one can, have a better life and also have, create the conditions to have a good rebirth. And then those in middle capacity really want to get out of cyclic existence. They want to stop this birth, death, rebirth, death, blah, blah, blah. That's what samsara is. It's just the cycle of suffering within this uncontrolled state of birth and death. And those of great capacity also want to get out of this cycle of existence, but they want to develop full enlightenment in order to be able to help others get out. So they're not just satisfied with themselves being liberated. They, they want to get everybody out. It's sort of like, once I've figured it out, might as well help others get out, kind of thing. So the Mahayana tradition, which is the Tibetan tradition's Mahayana. Most of the Zen tradition is Mahayana. So the countries like China, the Chan tradition is Mahayana. They're called the Northern Transmission. So it's when the teachings left India, they went sort of to where China is and where Vietnam starts, the northern part of Vietnam, and eventually made it to Japan. And those countries, they follow the Mahayana teachings, which say everybody can become a Buddha. Everybody has the capacity to become a Buddha. So they sort of start here. The teachings start with this idea that the purpose in life is to become enlightened in order to help others become enlightened. And what that does is gets everybody out of this cycle of suffering. And so they exist, but in a state of bliss. So there's no longer this, we kind of have this, kind of idea that if you want anything good, you're going to have to suffer. That it comes as a package deal, And that's true in samsara. That's sort of the nature of samsara. But it's because we misunderstand how things exist that we get trapped in this kind of experience. So, get to see the workings of my computer. So when we were talking about the beginner capacity, we talked about how, sentient beings, because they're really interested in having a good rebirth, what they need to focus on. And of course, first of all, you have to inspire yourself. You have to remember impermanence, that this body will die. You will run out of time in this life to create the causes, for a good rebirth in the next life. So you think a lot about what it means to have a lower realm rebirth and why it's not so desirable. You rely on the teachings to show you how to create the causes to have a good rebirth. So you need to understand karma, which is the law of cause and effect. You do this by focusing on developing ethics, so ethical body, speech, and mind, developing your concentration and your wisdom, which we kind of do throughout the paths. Then when you want to get completely liberated, then you need to really understand the truth of suffering and the truth of the origin of suffering, and that suffering can end, and that there's a method to do that. You have to realize all four of those points, because to end suffering, to be liberated, you have to realize these things. You have to actualize them. So the way, so you're focusing on renunciation. So what does renunciation mean?
No longer want to pursue the worldly, what do you call them?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Worldly desires.
I call them all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Desire.
To give up,
Yeah.
to give
Mundane.
up on
Worldly
pleasures,
concerns.
samsara, and also the suffering samsara as well.
Yeah. So really, what renunciation's about is giving up the suffering of samsara. It's becoming disenchanted with cyclic existence. It's recognizing that even the pleasures of samsara are a type of suffering, and that none of it's good enough considering the price we pay in our suffering. That our suffering is quite devastating. And if we, so if we could stop that, it certainly is a bigger deal than whether or not you get the good job, the good car, the chocolate cake. So, but you have to realize emptiness. You have to realize how things exist in order to be liberated, in order to quit being stuck in samsara. It's really the foundation of samsara is our ignorance. So when you get to the great capacity, renunciation becomes so developing renunciation is not talked about that way. It's talked about in the way of developing bodhicitta. What's bodhicitta, for those of you who know?
The wish to attain enlightenment for the sake of benefiting others.
For the sake of all sentient beings. The wish to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings. That assumes renunciation. So you can't achieve bodhicitta without being disenchanted with cyclic existence. So they no longer really talk about renunciation, even though you still have to develop it. So this is the assumption that we need everything from all three capacities in order to become enlightened. But if you start, if you happen to meet the Mahayana teachings right off the bat, so they use somewhat different jargon. You still need to have a succession of good rebirths in order to keep working on your mind, in order to develop bodhicitta, in order to realize emptiness, in order to become fully enlightened. Make sense?
So are you saying if you, right off the bat, meaning when you're first born, if your parents had, introduced you?
No, the first time you walk into a Buddhist center, it happens to be a Mahayana center. So the teachings you're going to receive are going to be from this point of view. If you meet the teachings by going to a Theravadan center, This is not going to be the angle from which you're coming from. The teachings are presented in a different fashion. The Buddha taught both, so there's not any problem there. It's just a matter of what you meet. And so just to help you understand that, like, so sometimes if you happen to read a book in a different tradition, I've read a lot of Ajahn Chah's lineage, the forest monks, Thailand. You know, you have to understand the jargon is different. So you just want to make sure. And what they mean by enlightenment is different. So when we present this graduated path to enlightenment, it's really from a Tibetan tradition. It's the way the Tibetan teachers, not the Tibetan teachers, the Indian masters coming from Nalanda University presented it, and sort of, as some of my teachers have said, you know, they come to Tibet and realize, oh, y'all need serious help. So we're going to lay this out very specifically for you. Like, we'll create a how-to manual, which is what the Lamrim texts are. They're just basically an instruction manual on how you go from where you are to enlightenment. So, and all the schools, there are 4 schools in Tibetan Buddhism, and all of them have this kind of text. So they're just written by different masters. They originated with different masters, but they're very similar texts, which is just interesting to me. So, but like the Zen tradition, the Chan tradition, and the Tibetan tradition all hold Nagarjuna as one of the main teachers. He was a Nalanda master from India. But they draw different conclusions about the teachings. So, just thought I'd confuse you thoroughly. So now, if your goal now is to get out of samsara, achieve full enlightenment for the benefit of others, then what you emphasize in your meditations and readings and reflections are how to develop this wish, this bodhicitta wish, this mind that wants to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. Then and so bodhisattva comes from the word bodhicitta, or the other way around maybe. I don't know. But a bodhisattva is someone who's attained bodhicitta, who has that mind, 24/7. So everything that they do, everything that they think, everything that they say is under the influence of wanting to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So in order to try to generate this kind of mind, the advice is to work on your love and compassion, take some vows to help you kind of, your speech and your bodily actions are in line with this goal, training in the bodhisattva perfections, and then eventually you have to train in the tantric path in order to create the cause for the body of the Buddha, the form body of the Buddha. We stuck? Very stuck. I know this course has just so much information. So if you want to develop universal compassion, meaning compassion for all sentient beings, if you want to develop love for all sentient beings, if you want to develop bodhicitta, which is to become enlightened for all sentient beings, then the basis for all of those is equanimity. That's where that's the foundation. So we have to do a lot of work on equanimity. So Kama Shila basically talks about 2 types of reflections that we do. So one is just recognizing that all sentient beings are the same and wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. Yeah. That no matter what we're doing, what we're talking about, what we're thinking about, that underneath that, that's really what drives us, is wanting to be happy and not to be suffering. And we're the same in this way. And we pretty much don't know what we're doing. So we're not very successful. And then Another thing to look at is that our labels of friends, enemies, and strangers are very fluid concepts. They change. That all our friends and enemies were strangers once. Some of our friends were enemies once. Some of our enemies, were friends once. That it's just something that's just dependent on our relationship with them in a particular moment. And in fact, some people may see us as friends and we see them as the enemy. So it's really even just in one direction. So it's entirely what we call my friends, my enemies, my loved ones, my strangers are from our point of view. Just me. Then we want to think about beginningless time. So this is why, this course is on the whole path, so it's all the little pieces. So according to the Buddha, our consciousness has always existed. There's no beginning to it. It just always has existed. So we all have consciousness in this moment. And all of our moments of consciousness were preceded by a moment of consciousness, which was preceded by a moment of consciousness, which was preceded by a moment of consciousness. And if you follow that back and back and back and back and back and back and back, when your mind enters the fertilized egg, in the womb, the moment of mind before that, was in the last life, before that one. And it just goes back and back and back and back and back. And when the Buddha talks about his past lives, he just says, well, I never got to a beginning. I never got to a first past life.
Even the Buddha doesn't go to his first.
No,
You can't
because
realize
there
that.
isn't one.
There isn't one.
There isn't a first. This is like, it almost gives me goosebumps when I think about this, because it's like, whoa, no beginning? What does that mean? And then I look at, what does it mean to say there's a beginning? I can't get my mind around that either. Because what came before the beginning? What made the beginning start? And even if you believe, yes. That's way too subtle for me. I might have missed you for like forever.
If you talk about the numerous lifetimes lived by our being,
Our
consciousness, you can only go so far on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Because we've
absolutely.
been only here for so long.
That's right.
So that will encompass other realms and other
Planets, other universes, other galaxies, other whatever there is. So it's a big assertion. Physicists don't seem to have trouble with this. This is where it's helpful if you can think like a physicist and kind of go, oh, there might be 15 parallel universes, there might be, whatever they can think of. And they can explain it mathematically of why that's possible. Well, that's, I'm not there yet. So I have to deal with just kind of taking their word for it. But it's fascinating. So yeah, it's just this idea that there's, so it's not just that our consciousness has always existed, but the stuff, physicality has always existed. Now the shape it takes, changes. It's impermanent, just like, everything. Yeah.
So this beginningless process, does it only go in one direction? The past, or is it also...
Well,
is
our
it
minds
past-
never end either.
Just past, future...
I know. Good luck with that. It's just like, okay, what does that mean? Yep. Obviously, the way we experience things is in a linear fashion in this life. Yeah.
It always, it's always a marvel to me whenever I like just walk down the road or walk down the sidewalk, and if you were to just use your own two legs and just keep walking, you just really feel how infinite the world is.
Because it's a circle.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's sort of like that. It's this, there's no, what fascinates me too is when you think about your mind. And so you just have a thought. Okay, let's go to Saturn. And so you can kind of picture what you've seen in pictures of Saturn, right? You know, and then you can just go further than that and keep going further. There's really, the only limit to our ability for our mind is how much we know. An enlightened mind has no ignorance. It knows everything. You know, so it's just kind of like, okay.
That's why I'm thinking the Buddha must know where it began, where things.
There's no beginning. The Buddha knows that there's no
Just
beginning.
knows that there's no beginning.
It can be, is comfortable with that. Unlike us. We're going, there's got to be a first.
And yeah, that's
Mhm.
usually what the pondering. That's the question, the ultimate question. Like, where did we start from, or where did we come
Well,
from?
yeah. Buddhism doesn't solve the mystery of existence. Existence just is. The non-physical consciousness exists, and the physical world exists. Now, cause and effect. Buddhism has a lot to say about cause and effect. So the consciousness has effects. So our thoughts, our actions of body and speech have effects, just like the physical rules of cause and effect. So, you know, anyway, and who knows what we'll find out, you know, I mean, we might not be in this body to find out, but, you know, we will be around. we just don't know what kind of body we'll have to find out. So, anyway, I won't go there because it's fun and it's off topic. But, so let's go back. So the point of bringing this up at this particular moment is one way to really be expansive about thinking about how friends, enemies, and strangers are just fluid labels we give based on a particular relationship in a particular moment is to think about if all sentient beings have always existed, including ourselves, then every single sentient being has been a friend of ours at some point, an enemy of ours at some point, a loved one, a stranger, our mother, our father, our partner, our kids, you know, because there's been time. So this idea of having these sort of, oh, but this is my best friend, you know, it's only true in relationship to a particular time, in a particular perspective, that you're labeling it that. But we hold on to that, don't we? We imbue these relationships with something more permanent, more fixed than that. Like, you know, we have a soul connection. And the Buddha didn't talk about things like that. We have karmic connections, sure, but we have karmic connections with every single sentient being. The ones we are meeting up in this life just happen to be, you know, the stronger ones at the moment. Okay, have we creeped anybody out yet? So really trying to be this expansive in your mind about recognizing that all your good friends have been your good friends again and again and again. They've also been your worst enemy. They've also been your mother. They've also been your own precious child. you know. So having this distinction between individual sentient beings, as if some are worthy of your affection and some are not, is really meaningless in Buddhism. There's no foundation for it, other than, you know, just what's going on in our relationship at this particular moment. It's no more than that. So why is this important? Because we're trying to develop great compassion, great loving kindness. We're trying to develop the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of every single sentient being. So all those iguanas that fell out of the trees last week have been our mothers in some way. All the mosquitoes we swat. I had a friend who teaches how to learn Tibetan, and he was a tutor in one of the courses I took in Australia. And he said when his mother died, it changed his whole relationship with mosquitoes. I just kept thinking, oh, that could be my mother. Not so quick to kill them when you could be your mother. So anyway, so one method to try to cultivate great compassion, great love, this mind of bodhicitta, Lama Atisha taught these sevenfold cause and effect, 6 causes, 1 effect. It has lots of different names, but basically it's a 7-fold method to achieve bodhicitta. And the first is recognizing that all beings have been your mother. Well, this is kind of dependent on the idea of beginningless time. You know, so you have to kind of keep your mind open to that. You don't have to believe it, but when you first start reflecting on it, you just kind of, okay, we're just gonna, you know, let's assume. So. And then we need to recognize, we want to remember their kindness. What problems can arise with this?
Having a bad relationship with your mother.
Yeah, having a bad relationship with your mother, and having a terrible relationship with your mother, you know. So what you need to do is start looking in the bigger picture. Is, you know, my mother didn't want a daughter, and when I was born, she just freaked out. She's like, what's the point of this? You know you're not going to get the life you want because you're a girl. So she really wasn't too thrilled with having to raise someone, because basically her attitude was that if I can raise you to be whatever you want to be, but you're not going to be allowed. So why bother? So I was basically thrown in a what did they playpen?
Playpen.
Yeah, and ignored, and then sent to nursery school and, you know, and stuff, so she didn't have to deal with it. She brought my brothers to school in the car. She drive right past me. We all went to the same school. She just, you know, kind of went, okay, we're just going to pretend you don't exist. So when I first heard this teaching, I was kind of like, I don't think so. But I'm here. You know? She did something right. She fed me. I am just like in awe that this person who really freaked out when I was born took care of me at all. You know, she fed me, clothed me, sent me to school, you know, all those things. Not to mention going through childbirth and pregnancy. I don't have any children. I haven't been willing to do that for anybody. So, hey. So we really have to, you know, we have to step back and recognize that no, it's true that some mother-child relationships are bad. They're abusive. They're, you know, that kind of thing. But most of us, fortunately, don't have that. And if we live to see adulthood, something was done for us. So if you have that kind of situation, the fact that you're alive, someone took care of you. So you can think of that person, you know, as being your caretaker, you know, like a mother in this life. And recognize, so this idea is, you know, you're thinking about their kindness. Well, I think it was a great kindness that my mother kept me, so because she didn't want me. So it's, it's like this. And then she had the greater kindness when I was all screwed up in my 20s to tell me what had happened, so that all the pieces of my life made sense. Yes, I did drive past you on the way to school. Yes, I did do those things, And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I thought you just didn't like children, but somehow you seem to like my brothers a bit better. So that didn't make sense. But she laid it out for me, which I thought was incredibly generous, because I know she wasn't comfortable doing it. So she sat with the discomfort and in front of my dad explained this, and fortunately in front of a therapist, so I didn't stay in a hole for the rest of my time, but it's just interesting, isn't it? So we can, this kind of exercise can really help us try to gain a different perspective on it. That's not personal, because we don't have to stay stuck in the personal. We can just kind of look, well, I'm not sure I would have done that. I was a terribly selfish person. Maybe I wouldn't have been so nice. She didn't hurt me. So, and I'm so grateful I had these teachings, because she died when I was 27. About a year after she told me about my upbringing. And so it really, because I didn't have Buddhism then, but so later it was just really helped me, kind of go, oh, well, I don't have to hold on to this idea of terrible mother. That it's meaningless. It's temporary, it's fluid.
But she was ignorant, like she didn't, the way her thinking was about what a woman's capabilities are. It sounds like she didn't take it, you personally. She
Nope.
just was looking at it as a.
She says, sorry, you were born the wrong gender,
Right.
you're out of luck.
So she would still love you, and you at least realize the difference why she had
I'm not
that
sure I can say that,
bias.
but yeah, I understood completely. Hence, I didn't think life was fair either. But that's not the point. The
Yeah.
point is that when you start to recognize that our labels are really just, they're trying to capture, the merest amount of time. And how often do we have great love for someone in 1 hour and not so much the next hour? And then we have great love for them again. And then it goes, because we are responding in life to everything from our own perspective that wants just happiness and doesn't want to suffer. And we judge everybody from that basis. And that's really not enough, because no sentient being can be explained in 1 moment or 5 moments. And if our consciousness has been since beginningless time, we don't have to worry about ever being one thing. Ooh, I'm just this. And according to the Buddha, actually what he saw when he became omniscient was that we all had Buddha potential. We can all fully develop our good qualities to perfection, abandon all our negative qualities, because we'll correct our ignorance with wisdom, and then there just won't be any basis for those negative states of mind to arise. So trying to develop this equanimity with others, and trying to develop, not just, oh, we're all the same, but more than that, this desire, this ability to care for them in a way that wants to repay their kindness, in a way that wants to, wishes that they were free of suffering, that wishes that they had happiness, that actually cares, that they puts them into their circle of concern. So the way you start with this kind of exercise is you start with the people you care about. You know, so you just try to see all your loved ones, your siblings, your parents, your children, your grandparents, your best friends, whatever, as having been your mother. And think about what that means. Think about all the nights that your mother stays up all night long because you're sick. All the times you threw up on your mother and you didn't get smacked. So all the ways in which tirelessly, even with great fatigue, they still took care of you when you were totally helpless. And how amazingly kind that is. When you think about how often somebody asks you for help and your first instinct is go, not today. Mothers don't get to do that. And so for a fairly significant period of time, our caregivers were available to us 24/7. And if they physically couldn't be there, someone else had to be there, It's really kind of amazing. And we don't think about it often. People who live in more perhaps rural areas or have less resources in their lives are much more intimate with their families and their neighbors and their, and what they're going to eat and how they get their food and all that thing may have a lot more appreciation because they see it. They don't go away to school, they see the kids, they see the breastfeeding, they see the diapers, they see the whole process of it from an early age all the way through. But the more removed we are to the process, the more we can forget how incredible it is that any of us make it to adulthood. Make it to puberty, and make it past puberty. It's all pretty amazing stuff when you think about it. So one of the things about being able to develop the mind of bodhicitta is really being able to have this more expansive view. Have more equanimity about people, about sentient beings. Snakes are people too when you use the Buddhist jargon. So anything with a mind is a person. But in general, we're talking about human beings. So then we want to repay their kindness. And so you start thinking about what's the best way to repay the kindness. And this is part of the idea that becoming enlightened in order to lead them out of suffering is really the best way to repay kindness. And all of this, of course, takes looking at people's suffering and to be able to feel their suffering. Because you know what it feels like. We suffer. The truth of suffering is horrific. Because we don't just suffer in the, I didn't get the right coffee kind of way. We suffer tremendous loss. And everybody goes through this. So being able to really understand when we say we want you to be free of suffering, that we're not talking just little stuff, we're talking about big stuff. And we understand how bad it feels to have these experiences because we've gone through them. Graciela, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, you said what was the best way to repay their kindness, and I missed it.
Okay, it's to become enlightened in order to lead them out of suffering. And from thinking about their suffering, we can develop affection. You know, like when you see some news story about when you see children who are in the midst of some horrible war or something going on, and you're just, you have affection for them. Because you recognize the commonality, the humanity that we share. You know that child has some parents really worried about them, or maybe they're dead because they're in a war zone, and da 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 da. And so you develop compassion. That's mixed with affection, and that's what we want to be able to develop for all sentient beings. Is that ability to just care for them to be able to get out of samsara. Because samsara is the nature of suffering. So as we're developing this, then finally we have to generate this highest intention, a wish, that says, oh, not only do I want them to get out of suffering and to have happiness, I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to do something about it. And so from that place, then you're generating that wish to become enlightened for all sentient beings. And then once you've done this a whole lot, maybe after a few lives, a few lifetimes of trying to think this way, you finally generate bodhicitta. So you go beyond just the wish. Now you're trying to do whatever it is that it takes in order to become enlightened so you can actually benefit. So your wishing becomes, you're aspiring to become enlightened, but now you're engaging in the deeds of a bodhisattva in order to actualize that. Make sense? Sort of? Maybe. So as I said, when you were trying to recognize all beings in your mother, you have, this continuity of mind. You have to kind of reflect on that, And one of the premises here, according to the Buddha, is that the physical body cannot produce the non-physical mind. It can be a support. The human brain is a tremendous physical support for our minds. The mosquito brain is not such a tremendous support for the mosquito mind. Same kind of mind, lousy body. And so according to this premise, so every moment of mind needs a preceding moment of mind, because only mind can produce mind. And when you develop the kind of concentration that generates the ability to remember your past lives, you'll start to be able to go back and back and back and back and recognize or realize the continuity of mind. So when you're trying to work with compassion and love, it's really helpful to cultivate, to practice these meditations, these reflections with people you know. So you start with your friends, your loved ones that you know, and you wish them to be free of suffering. You wish them to have happiness. And then you think of people you don't know at all, but perhaps you always eat in the same place at work. You share an office, but you've never actually met them. Whenever you see them in the elevator, they ride past your house every day on their bicycle. So then you cultivate from people who you're just neutral about. You don't know anything about them, so you just assume the best, you know, and you can try to work on including them in your circle of concern. And then finally, when you've really met some success with the people you care about and the strangers, you move towards those people you're not so wild about, the people you find difficult. And again, you start small, you know, those who just kind of irritate you. You don't really think anything negative about them, but they're just, you know, not your style. You don't share the same preferences at all. And then eventually you can be like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who feels this, you know, who's able to include the President of China in his thinking. Somebody is a president. Presidency. So it's just a way of really trying to keep, you know, our minds can hold everyone, so it's really not a difficult mind. So if, you know, like if you get really annoyed with insects, you can work with insects. You know, and just try to think, oh, well maybe it's not very kind to just kill something that's not bigger. You know, what I really want, you know, just because, you know, I mean, you think about it, we don't let people kill children just because they're bigger. You know, it just, size shouldn't matter, you know, whether it's a mosquito, whatever. They want to live. Everything wants to live. Even little, amoebas run away from the little probes, you know, that scientists are poking about in them, you know. It's like, this is what we do. We run away from possible pain because we're not stupid. So you just work with what you can. You know, you recognize the mind that is excluding, and you try to counter it. And then you want to try to direct your mind towards generating the thought that wants to do something about it. That's not just content with wishing. Yes.
Isn't happiness a form of suffering? Was that the second one of three things last week?
The pleasures of samsara is a type of suffering.
So that's different from happiness.
Yes. And it's, you know, we can't really even talk about it in the sense that we're not talking about the happiness that we experience in samsara. But we all have the wish to not even have, you know, that we only want the pleasant experiences of samsara. So, you know, so it's, even animals want that, you know, it's not, that's not complicated. But the happiness we're talking about when we say everlasting happiness, you know, the freedom from suffering. First, bodhisattvas want both. They want people to be free of the suffering that we experience in samsara, as well as attain everlasting happiness. You know, so we don't think little, you know, we want it all. And that the good news is, the process that helps us eliminate suffering is the process that gives us the conditions that are pleasant. So it's a win-win situation. It's just not instant. So part of this, to me, comes from, this idea of taking responsibility comes from this recognition of a precious human rebirth. That we have good conditions. And not everybody has good conditions. So those of us who do have good conditions, who've met the teachings, might want to take on this responsibility, because if we don't, who will? So it's about recognizing our opportunity because of our good conditions and saying, okay, I'm going to quit being so all concerned about myself and all concerned about my little stuff of today and tomorrow and next year, and I'm going to start thinking, turning it around and focusing on the concerns of others, because my conditions are pretty good. And then when we have crummy conditions because it's not permanent, you know, it comes and goes. We have crises and terrible events happen in our lives, then that's our time to, you know, for self-care and relying on others to help us. But then when, you know, we find our ground again, our conditions are good again, then we want to keep doing, you know, trying to generate our focus on others. Make sense?
Well, can you pop in and out of being a bodhisattva
No.
by, you know, having like a relapse or, you know, not?
You're just not a bodhisattva yet.
So is that something that's a realization?
Yes.
So
It actually, what's really cool about the mind of bodhicitta, so the measure of bodhisattva is someone who's generated the mind of bodhicitta effortlessly, spontaneously, and it now influences every moment of thought, everything that they say, everything they do. Okay? That actually becomes a main mind. In general, you know, compassion is a state of mind, love is a state of mind, anger is a state of mind. Bodhicitta is so powerful of a wish that it becomes a, you know, the actual, it just pervades your mind. So that now all the other states of mind, when they arise, are accompanied by this wish to become enlightened. So as you can imagine, or at least to me, the path is easy at this point. When you become a bodhisattva, you're never thinking about yourself. Your own stuff doesn't come up at all. Your whole entire focus is benefiting others. So to me, that's, you know, we're on the hard part. We're not, you know, this is the hard part, is trying to generate that kind of mind. Trying to get over ourselves, you know, and recognize when we have good conditions and use them to the fullest to benefit others, you know. This is the hard part. Once we finally are no longer self-centered, and we're entirely other-centered.
it's like going down that checklist.
Yeah.
You say, I do this, I do this most of the time, I do this, I feel like I do this a lot of the time, you know.
But then you have a realization and you just always do it.
Mm.
There's no struggle anymore. There's no effort anymore. You see all beings as having been your mother.
What about calm abiding? Is that like, does that come before or after the realization?
I think it comes before,
Before.
but it's debatable. Calm abiding is a state of concentration where you can place your mind on its object for as long as you want, no matter what's going on. You no longer have any trouble with anything from the body or anything from your own mind. So you're not distracted, the body doesn't bother you. It's called pliancy. It's easy for you. And once you place your mind on an object, it's there. You know, the only thing that makes you leave the object is your choice. You choose to turn your mind to something else. So to me, that's probably what it takes to be
Before.
able to develop bodhicitta.
Bodhicitta.
Uncontrived bodhicitta.
I see, yeah.
Now, effort for bodhicitta is how you get there. It's not like if you wait around and just think, oh, well, I'll just wait till it comes. First of all, it will never come. You know, it's a result of having done the work. You know, we have to change our habits of mind, the way we think now, in order to be able to think this way. We have to overcome our ignorance to remove all the foundation for the way we think now. And then we're liberated. But it's, you know. So, they say some sharp faculty bodhisattvas usually have a realization, not a direct realization, but an unshakable, valid realization of emptiness before they develop bodhicitta. Like they have to, these are the people that need proof. I need to prove to me that it's possible, and then they'll do it for everybody. So, yeah.
That makes sense.
But that both require lots of work, and both require calm abiding.
Yes. So you could work towards that first, trying to develop comma biting, would you say, if you really wanted to try to develop more?
You just do it all. Comma biting, though, is what we'll need eventually to be able to hold our mind on our objects.
On our objects, yes.
Yeah, so we don't forget. And where do you start with that? You start with mindfulness. Then you start with short meditations on your breath. And then you develop, you start on short meditations on, maybe all sentient beings have been my mother. And you stay on topic. And then when you have a certain experience of that, you stay on that. So you go from analytical to single-pointed to analytical to single-pointed. But to me, the good news is that once you develop these minds, it's going to be easy. So it's not like you have to worry about, do you know how much work there is? Bodhisattva. Well, you won't be worried about that at all. So it will be easy. So one of the reasons why we really want to look at our good qualities and really understand what are good qualities and really look at ethics and all these things is because we need to be convinced that there's nothing but benefit to attaining them. Or otherwise we won't do the work. And when you understand that when you're trying to benefit others, you need to know exactly how to benefit them, you can develop this certainty that an enlightened mind has to be omniscient. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to be precise in its help. So the aspiring mind of bodhicitta is that mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all. The engaged mind is when you take the vows and now you're engaging in the deeds. So what we have now are contrived, effortful aspirations of bodhicitta. And then those of us who take vows, bodhisattva vows, we also have contrived, engaged vows. That's just jargon. So without the vows, it's called aspiring, and with the vows, it's called engaging. Because you've made promises to keep these vows. Then there's a second method of reflection in order to be able to develop this mind of bodhicitta. And this is Shantideva's method. Shantideva's when he wrote Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. It's called exchanging self and others. Sometimes it's called equalizing and exchanging self and others. So just like with the sevenfold cause and effect, the foundation is equanimity. So the first thing you have to do is equalize. You have to see yourself as no different from everybody else. That everybody equally wants happiness, equally doesn't want to suffer. That you don't have to think in terms of everybody's been your mother, but just basically, it's the same idea. It's this idea that there's no one more deserving or less deserving. We're all the same. And then we reflect on the disadvantages of self-centeredness, which is often referred to as just self-cherishing, like the wrong connotation. Because self-care is fine. It's this, where we just have our blinders on and everything's coming from, but what's in it for me? Mentality. So we have to really understand what the disadvantages of self-centeredness is. And one of its disadvantages is it prevents happiness. Part of the teachings is that actually the path to happiness is cherishing others. That takes a lot of reflection to really get. We kind of, we read that kind of stuff and we kind of go, it sounds good, but do we really have a realization of it? Probably not. So we want to investigate the advantages of cherishing others, which we've talked about in here in other classes on Sundays. And then we actually want to exchange self with others. And so what that's getting at is instead of putting ourselves first, that everything's from our own perspective, that we kind of, we see us as number one and my family, my loved ones, as the most important thing. We exchange that attitude for putting others in our place. We see others as the most important thing. And we try to do everything from the perspective of how this will help others. And then we practice taking and giving, which is the Tong Ling, which is the Tibetan word, which is actually giving and taking. Because things don't translate directly. So when practicing taking and giving, that's when we make the wish that we could take on all the sufferings of others and give them all our happiness. This also requires practice. Yeah, we don't just naturally do this. We do it though. Parents do this for their children. So that's proof we have the capacity to do it. So when you start to see all sentient beings as have been your mother, or all sentient beings have been your own precious child, you can start to have that clue that, gee, maybe it's possible to really think this way. Just because someone's not your child in this life, has no relevance. Now, can you take the suffering of others? No.
Not literally.
No. But it's developing that heartfelt desire that if you could, you would. And again, parents understand what this means. Those of us who aren't parents have to, really put in the effort to try to imagine what that's like and try to generate it. Both of these methods result in generating that wish to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings. So if you become habituated to viewing yourself as you presently view others with an attitude of neglect, and to viewing others as you presently viewed yourself with a cherishing attitude, you will exchange self and other. So that's the meaning of self and other. It's just you literally are exchanging what you usually reserve for yourself and put the object of that to be others. A lot of people combine these two techniques into an 11-point method. Which kind of cracks me up because nobody has time to do the 7-point. We're exchanging self with other. So let's be realistic. When we go through this module, so it's just, you can just do one part of it, like just spending the morning thinking about trying to see everybody as having been your mother, and then trying to think of the kindnesses of mothers just in general. So you just do it part by part. And one of the biggies is this equanimity, really understanding that instead of grasping on to the labels we give others, to loosen our grip on that and understand it's fine to have friends. There's nothing wrong with having friends, but recognizing, cherishing our friends above all others is based on ignorance. It's based on this narrow view of that this is it. We're only connected to the people we know in this life, and we only, the people who, we consider helpful to us or that we enjoy their company are the only ones of value in this life, We have to really look at that attitude. because it's part of the underpinning to us and them. And we can see how dangerous that attitude is. So like the way I work with this is my enemies are, in the realm of politics. The people that I can have the strongest, irritation with are people who don't hold the same political view I do. So it's a perfect opportunity to really work with this mind, because it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just become so obviously ridiculous when you look at your attitude, And how scary the world is if we think that everybody has to think the same way. What would that look like? You wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be allowed. So understanding these really tight graspings to labels and to groups and to us and them leads to world wars. Leads to gangs. It just leads to this, this unhealthy, narrow point of view that I have to take care of my group in order to survive, or whatever the mentality is.
What about your ethics?
Yeah, what about your ethics?
Like you have, you're working on your ethics as part of, what you, which is the beginning, compassion and ethics and
No, first is generosity, then
generosity. Yeah, and ethics is in there, and it just goes against your ethics to, to condone certain things that people are doing.
Doesn't mean you throw out the people with the action, which is what we do. We repeat historically this idea we can kill all the people we don't like doing and then we'll be fine, and it never works. We just change our opinion about what behavior we don't like.
So forgiveness. I didn't see that in there.
Because it's not necessary when you really think about it. Compassion is, to me, it's just not, it's just a different approach. Forgiveness implies that someone has done harm to you. And according to Buddhism, you only experience what you created the cause.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So this is, again, trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Remembering that we're not separate. We're interconnected, interdependent. We're experiencing these things because we've created the cause for them to happen. And how we respond is going to dictate whether we keep repeating this again and again and again. So separating people's actions of body, speech, and mind from that consciousness, that stream of consciousness that exists, is really important to this understanding of equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
And also that we're all capable of everything. We're all capable of murder, we're all capable of mass murder, we're all capable of, whatever. We're all capable of incredible philanthropic activities and generosity and, It's just what conditions do we meet? And are we creating the cause to have resources to be able to be generous?
That's why you said if it's somebody you don't like, or the politics, or a politician, or something like that, you just have to.
And one of the big picture views is understanding that we have the politicians we create the cause for. They're not some separate, independent individual over here that are completely disconnected from us over here. No.
All connected.
We're all connected. And what happens in the world is a dependent arising. And who is it dependent upon? Our past actions. So learning how to respond with compassion and loving kindness, no matter what's going on is a starting point to, loosening our grip that arises from ignorance. Samsara is a manifestation of our karma, our past actions. Fortunately, you don't have to believe in all of this all at once. Because I don't know if you can do that. So that's like too much. Because it's a complete worldview that's very different from the one we start with, And I'm sure it's, for people who are raised Buddhists, it's also quite a big view, Accepting karma, the consequences of accepting karma is difficult.
So is this the big view now, the third one we're on?
Now, the big view is the whole view.
The whole view.
Beginningless lives.
Right.
That, the mind never ceases. That, that the cause and effect doesn't just include, apple seeds and apple trees. It includes hatred and generosity. So, that what we consider pleasure is actually a release from suffering. And it's temporary and not very satisfying. And then we do all sorts of really terrible things in order to get that moment of pleasure. Fortunately, most of the time, those of us in good conditions don't have to do it very often. You don't have to do bad things to have those things happen. But we're capable. Make no mistake. So once you're a bodhisattva, then the deeds of a bodhisattva, you're trying to perfect generosity and ethics and patience and joyous effort, concentration and wisdom, and these build on each other. In order to practice ethics, you really have to let go of your attachment to your stuff, to your possessions. So generosity is where you start. You start by being able to give away your stuff. And then once you've kind of like, I'm kind of good with this. This is all right. I can do that. I don't have to have it all the time, whatever. Then that is the foundation for being able to be ethical, because self-interest isn't clouding your view. An attachment to the self really makes it difficult to be ethical. That's because we rationalize. We don't even see the truth because we just rationalize our, getting our way. So the more we can just let go of attachment to our stuff, that helps. And then it's not just our stuff, right? Because then we have to be generous with our time. To be generous with all the different levels of generosity there are. And all of those things help us remove our self-interest. And then we practice ethics. Which is just really being able to, without your self-interest involved, be able to choose, make decisions based on equanimity, based on, compassion, all these things. Because one of the biggest obstacles to ethics is self-interest. And then patience. Well, if we've given up self-interest and we're working on ethics, taking our self-interest out, but then, patience. Because we're not going to get our own way. Because we've decided our own way is not the right way. But, tolerating the discomfort. We all know this. We've all had to make decisions in our lives that didn't go over well with others. We've had to deal with the consequences of those choices. And that takes patience. Not everybody's going to like what you choose to do. What do you mean? process. Like making all the, everybody's going to, give their presents away to, the wishing tree in the mall for Christmas. Your children might not be thrilled with you. And then patience is a foundation for things like joyous effort. To be able to do the work of like developing bodhicitta, of becoming enlightened, you have to develop an enthusiasm for virtue. It takes patience. And then if you're just so goal-oriented, like, oh, I want to develop kama body by next week, you're not going to succeed. So patience is helpful. Then you want joyous effort because developing kama body takes a long, long time. So you need to be willing to take all that time to be able to get there. So the more that you can keep, that you just know, oh, I need kama abiding because that's the basis for being able to actually have uncontrived bodhicitta. That'll be the basis for being able to realize emptiness, So what if it takes all this work and I have to have the perfect conditions and I need 6 months by, with nothing else required of me and blah, blah, blah. I want to do that. And I'm happy to do that. And then concentration, of course, is what we need for wisdom, because it's what penetrates wisdom. Isn't it good news that, like once you're a bodhisattva, this will be easy peasy? Just, of course.
So who do you know that's a bodhisattva?
I think Lama Zopa Rinpoche is without doubt one. I don't have any doubt. I've never seen him.
But he won't admit that.
Of course not. You don't
No,
talk about
you
your own
don't talk about it.
realizations because we don't have any way to prove it.
Exactly.
So there's no point. Then it becomes like magical stuff when it's actually effort. The only reason I say that about Rinpoche, because I don't have any realizations, I can't possibly know, is I've never seen Rinpoche ever ask for a single thing for himself. I've never seen him ask for a drink of water for himself. I've literally never seen him ask for anything. Everything he does is he thinks it will benefit others.
What about kama abiding? Can you admit that?
I don't know.
Someone say.
I'd like to see you prove it. I mean, the problem with just saying, oh, I've got first of all, why? Why does anybody else need to know?
Right. But I mean, like, even, you would know it for yourself. Like if you,
And your teacher would probably know.
your teacher, and you,
You know. People have this fear that when they become enlightened, they won't know. Not possible. So I'm going to set that worry aside. You know. Now, can people be deluded in thinking?
Yes.
Yes. Because we have that capacity. So, yeah. But there's a reason why they say don't talk about your spiritual realizations, because people who don't have the same realizations as you cannot tell whether you're telling the truth or not. So there's no point in it whatsoever. Other than
prideful also.
It can be pride. It's certainly a good condition for pride. It also can be a good condition for abuse. So it's just not.
And realizing emptiness, that's in that same
Well,
category.
you know that there's no point in talking about that.
Yeah.
Because people have to realize emptiness. They can't, this is the thing. We can show methods. This is why, Buddhists can't do it for you. If they would, if they could, they would have already, and we'd all be just experiencing bliss, and we wouldn't have any of these conversations about samsara. Clearly, it's not that easy. And let's face it, as far as my view is if there was a creator God, he'd take care of it too. I just don't think there's anybody who's enlightened that would let us suffer this way if there was a choice out of it. I mean, that's just my personal belief.
Wouldn't be generous.
And if that exists, if there's a creator God, I don't particularly care. I don't want to get to know them. if they could take the suffering away, and they haven't, I don't think they'd be my friend.
My father used to feel that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just my
And
view.
that was just something he always said. He didn't believe in God because if God wouldn't let these atrocities happen to his buddies when he was in the war, that he saw blown up and all that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, my father lost faith in war too.
lost faith in God.
Yeah. But I mean, I can imagine a creator God who's not all powerful, who can't do anything about it. Because,
Right.
because that's where the beginning comes from. So if I need to search for a beginning, that works, But of course, I don't know what created that. So back once again, this idea of beginningless. So.
We stick with meditation at this point.
But the thing of it is, it's just this, so I'm of the belief, and this is just my personal view, it has nothing to do with any realizations at all, is that enlightened beings will do whatever they can to help us. And so they will work with our dispositions of mind. So, hence why there are many religions. We need help. And so, if there isn't anybody powerful enough to just do the work for us, then they're going to teach us in ways that we can hear. So it's important for us to find a spiritual path that fits for us, that we can do the work, that just suits our disposition of mind. Because I don't think enlightened beings care about jargon. And so I consider Buddhism the final view of how things exist, but I don't have any realizations.
And they're all real similar, a lot of religions.
Well, I think one of the things that we can feel confident in is about what are considered good qualities and what are considered negative qualities, because they're pretty persistent across all traditions. Respect life, respect property, respect relationships. It's all pretty much the same stuff.
And if you say Jesus was a Buddha,
I think, well, there's no, if you want to ask me, who's a bodhisattva, that's the ultimate bodhisattva act right there. Is Christ sitting there going, I'm doing this for the, I'm taking on the sufferings of all others.
it's true.
So. But unfortunately, until you have realizations, you can't recognize others who have realizations. Because it's a level of mind. So when we don't have that mind, we're obscured from being able to know. So now we're all convinced. I'm going to set up these. They have horses in all of this. So the generosity, ethics, patience, and joyous effort are considered skillful means. They're the method that we need to use in order to accumulate the merit we need that will remove the obstacles to be able to develop calm abiding and special insight. The wisdom that arises from having a state of concentration that never forgets its object. So it's not that the teachings say you want to, well, let's just start at the beginning, and get master those things, and then we'll move to the next thing. We don't know what we've succeeded in our practices in previous lives. So it may be that finally, we finally accumulate enough merit and remove some obstacle we had to realizing emptiness, So, this is why it's recommended that we do glance meditations on the whole path every day. So we can just always kind of remember the entire path.
So how do you do that?
Like the foundation of all good qualities is a glance, meditation of the whole path. So you memorize it and then you review it
Okay, every day.
every day. You know,
No, I mean, I think it's a good idea.
yeah, that's what's taught
Trying
in
to
the,
remember all of those pieces
Yeah.
and how they interact.
Yeah, so by the time, this is the beauty of taking all of these courses, is that by the end you kind of have an understanding of how all those pieces fit. In the beginning you do not, and that's okay. That's just how it starts. But then, some of it will resonate with you even though you don't understand anything else in it. So that's just the way it works. So it's about there's a reason why they recommend that we memorize certain text. And I was just talking to one of the nuns up in North Carolina, and she's memorized the Lamrim Chenmo outline, which is 42 pages. And she can now recite it in 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it took her a lot longer than that to memorize it. But, it's just interesting. We just think, like, oh, I can't do it. She's 70. She's just done it in the past 10 years. So she was over 60 when she started it.
That's hopeful.
Yes.
Inspiring.
Yes. Or you can be like me and have memorized it and have now forgotten it. Don't do that. It's very foolish. I had to memorize it when I was studying the course, and but since I didn't take a test on it after that, yeah, stupid, really stupid. Anyway, so we want to become really familiar. It's sort of like that outline. It's like you kind of can, kind of get this overview, of death and impermanence, the understanding that an animal rebirth or a hell realm rebirth or a hungry ghost rebirth aren't great conditions, So what are the causes of those? So you really understand karma, cause and effect. Then you want to really think about, we want to keep going over and over again the Four Noble Truths. Really understand what it means to say there's the truth of suffering. Because oftentimes, in some spiritual paths, it's sort of like the truth of suffering means get over it. It just, you're stuck. And that's not what it means in Buddhism. It means, okay, you see the truth of suffering, so now let's look at what causes suffering and see if you can do something about it. So we really want to get that understanding. We really look at the 12 links, how samsara itself works, how craving and grasping lead to, a seed ripening at the time of death that leads to the rebirth, that leads, blah, blah, blah. It just goes around. We need to understand just how craving is what keeps us stuck here. So that we can renounce, become disenchanted with samsara. Because it's really all about craving. When you think about, the negative minds, all arise from this idea of just, I just want to get what I want. I just want to avoid what I don't want. That craving just feeds our addicted mind. So we don't develop patience. So we don't develop, tolerance for the discomfort. So even those of us with good conditions waste our time. By just, let's have more delicious things. Let's have, more fun. Let's have, so we just exhaust our good karma. And then really trying to develop universal love and compassion so that we can develop the intention of bodhicitta. Because they all matter. Having the wish to become fully enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings is part of the condition to be able to become enlightened. Because as soon as we abandon one being, we've lost our path to enlightenment.
So what, can I ask a question? No, so if, say, if you had this wish to become enlightened for just solely for yourself, rather than for all sentient beings, would that be a craving?
Well, it's an obstacle to complete enlightenment. It's not an obstacle to liberation, but it's an obstacle to full enlightenment.
That would be considered sort of an attachment to.
They're just middle capacity. Well, it's indifference to others.
Right, but I mean, it's like it's more of like a craving for yourself rather than for others. It's like wanting that piece of cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's an obstacle to full enlightenment.
Okay.
If you don't care about the benefit of others, you don't need omniscience. You just need to know how to get out.
Omniscience. I don't understand omniscience.
Omniscient means knowing everything.
Oh yeah, omniscience.
Yep. So if all you're focused on is just liberation, what they say will happen is, of course, is when you're liberated, you'll realize everybody can do this and you'll want to help everybody. But you've delayed the process because you haven't accumulated the merit to remove your obstacles to full enlightenment. It's complicated.
Yeah, that's a little complicated.
Yeah.
I kind of get it.
Yeah. There are many layers. Do you have a question, Peggy?
It's too big.
Come on, Peggy, you can do it.
It's just hard for me to grasp being enlightened without.
You can't. You can be liberated. Liberation and enlightenment are not the same thing.
Well, it's hard for me to imagine being liberated
Me too.
without including all sentient beings.
Yeah.
It just.
Well, if you're taught that it's not possible, you know, the Theravadan tradition does not teach everyone can become a Buddha. So if you're taught it's not possible,
It just seems like it's kind of walking.
The Buddha taught
it.
it.
It needs some meditation. It needs some time on the cushion.
I wouldn't worry too much about it. But when you think about it, if you have to practice ethics and, you know, that all the things and realize things as they exist, they aren't necessarily predicated on great compassion and great love. You don't have to love everybody to be ethical.
Right.
You just have to set aside your self-interest. If you think it's impossible to be able to benefit all sentient beings, become enlightened, you know, omniscient, help all sentient beings, then, you know, if what you're taught is once you're liberated, your mind ceases at the time of liberation, then you can't come help anyone else. So it's a different teaching. You know, but His Holiness, I remember him saying, you know, I done Tomato and two of the forest monks were at a teaching of His Holiness that I attended as well, and we were line every day, you know, waiting to get in through all the security, and, you know. And His Holiness said he thought for sure that when someone realizes emptiness, there would no longer be any doubt about the ability to become completely enlightened to the benefit of others, that it would naturally arise. It's just that it said that you haven't accumulated enough merit, you need to have you need to do some more work in order to remove the obstacles to enlightenment. And if you've already started if you made that assumption from the beginning, it takes less time. That's all they said. They don't say. And we're talking about the difference between 3 eons, 4 eons.
Right.
You know? So, you know, it's like, you know. Now, they say if you practice Tantra, you know, to create the cause for the form body of a Buddha, once you've met the Tantra teachings in something like 16 lives, you'll become fully enlightened.
It's the fast path.
It's the fast path.
But when you're liberated, you don't have a rebirth.
Yeah, you can, well, you can choose your rebirth. You can be
Yeah.
born in samsara to benefit others.
How else would you develop merit that you didn't
Yeah, that's right. That's why you have a lot of
have
virtue.
to?
You need sentient beings to accumulate merit.
Mhm.
Yeah. But you're not born like a samsaric being. You're out of samsara. You can't be born like that.
Mhm.
So your body is a body of light. There are many more layers to this subject. So, all right, we fried. Y'all look fried. So, so now that we've been talking about these things, you might want to look at the foundation of all good qualities. Those of you who've taken a lot of these courses will have it in one of your files. And just search by foundation of all good qualities. It's on your computer. If you don't have it, email me and I'll send it to you. But it's because it's in this prayer book, and it's in a lot of places. In fact, you can find it on Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive, I'm sure.
Page 93.
It's page 93 in here. So it's just one of those. It's not even long, relatively speaking, considering half of it is Tibet. Nobody's requiring you to memorize it in Tibet.
What, two? Page
93. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is greatly meaningful, and is difficult to find again, please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful to abandon even the slightest negativities and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all other migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train in supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects, and correctly analyze the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special wisdom. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samadhi. As I have become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru Like that, may the gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma by completing the qualities of the stages of paths. May I quickly attain the state of Bhaktadara. So we go through, relying on the teacher, precious human rebirth, impermanence, ethics, the types of sufferings, the generating renunciation, the wish for liberation. What do you need to do that? Working on your mind with mindfulness and alertness. Pratimoksha vows are like nuns' vows, monks' vows, one-day vows, lay vows, lay vows for men and women. So they're lifetime vows. And then, understanding that we're just the same as all other sentient beings, all of us stuck in samsara. We need to develop bodhicitta, practice the bodhisattva vows, the engaging vows. And then we want to enter the tantra vehicle, which is the vajra vehicle, and keep our vows and samaya. So once you take, bodhisattva vows, those are not pratimoksha vows. Those are life after life vows. And then there are also tantric vows when you take Hayashira Tantra, so you have additional vows on that. And then you have samayas, which are pledges, which are really, I don't know the difference between them and vows, because basically you have to keep them. But they use different words. So it's, this is just, very basic, overview. There's also the lamp on the path to enlightenment, which is on the Atisha's text, which is an overview, which is actually the root Lam-Rim text. And then, lots of little. So you find one you like, get to know it well. So, I really like the one in Guru Puja. That verses from 84 to the end or something, or the Lam-Rim, and I just happen to have them. So. Anyway, but the idea of it is not, is to just always know where you are, what you're working on. So if you're working on generosity, you remember where that fits, that kind of thing. And it helps us train our mind. Anyway, so thank you for your efforts. Next week, enjoy Venerable Amy and her teachings. I forgot what the Wednesday night teaching is. But it's on the calendar. And then the Thursday night will be Buddhism in a nutshell. So she has a talk, that kind of reviews. There'll be another review with her perspective. So that will be good.